What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. I know last night when we were on the live that we said we probably ain't going to come back out with another video or another show up until tomorrow, Friday night's Beers and Beards show or episode that we have with Publicly Buzzed and the Opinionated Idiot. But you guys don't let us down. You guys never fail. Like I've said many times, this show it comes from you guys. You guys make this show. And yesterday on the live, we were talking about the Brady Giglio court document that was out there and what that means and who possibly is affected or was investigated by the Moscow Police Department internal affairs investigation, what that case was. I had no idea. We're going through a lot of speculation. And like I said, you guys don't fail. You guys sent me a bunch of information of who it could possibly be. Researching that, I think we kind of maybe found an answer. But before we start, I want to give you guys a quick word from from our sponsors, Data Seal. If you guys are interested in protecting your information from being on the web, whether it's your phone number, your name, your address, your religious or political preference, those type of things, you don't want that out on the interweb so that people can search. Check out Data Seal. They have an excellent program that removes all of your information. That way you can't be stalked, found, things like that. Check out the link in the description and in the comment section for 5% off. And so let's get back into this. Um, just a quick recap: Brady versus Giglio. Something came out, right? An officer was under a criminal affairs investigation for something that could jeopardize their credibility. Basically, what all that means. So let's find out, who do we think that this officer is? This officer could be, into what we think is going to be, Shane Gunnerson of the Moscow Police Department. And how does he, come apart into this case? Well, he was the responding officer. He was the first officer on scene on the morning of November 13th, or around noon at 11:58 a.m. He made contact with the 911 callers and the victims, the surviving victims, and also discovered the bodies. And so the bodies of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. And so that's who he is and what is being alleged of him. Now, I haven't seen this video or anything yet. This was sent to me, and it took me a little bit of time trying to get somebody to respond because I wake up pretty early. But I got a response. Apparently, this was on T-Rev, T-Rev's channel. Shout out to you, T-Rev. It states, I'm not sure where he got this from, but it does to me appear to be some sort of complaint or a citation for, some kind of civil lawsuit. But let's look into this. It says, exercised by plaintiffs and with retaliatory intent, handcuffed plaintiff Rory Wilson, forced him to the ground and conducted a custodial interrogation without providing him his Miranda warnings and knowing that the plaintiff Roy Wilson was not free to leave. Defendant Gunnerson suppressed exploratory evidence for almost a year and falsely testified in pursuant of criminal charges against the plaintiffs for exercising their free speech. The defendant Gunderson chose to treat plaintiffs as criminals despite knowing they were exercising their right to free speech in a way always allowed the city to ignore by officers before and since, with sole exception being in this case where plaintiffs were engaged. Now, like I said before, I'm not familiar where this part of the document is from. And so I didn't know anything about this case. So I decided to go in and look it up, right? From what I've been able to find, it is referring to a sticker that was placed on a pole that was in protest for the C-19 mandates at the time, especially in Moscow, Idaho. Apparently, they were a little bit high up there. So let's kind of look at this real quick. So this is from the Moscow Report. This is a newspaper in Moscow, Idaho. And this first statement is from Nate Wilson, who is the father of Rory Wilson. It says, Wilson's two teenage sons, now 19 and 14, are 10 months into their prosecution by the city of Moscow and Latok County for posting non-damaging stickers on poles without permission in downtown Moscow. Wilson himself is being prosecuted as an accessory. City of Moscow, Latah County prosecutors, and MPD seem to have taken several missteps in the prosecution. City Attorney Elizabeth Warner originally charged the Wilsons with 13 misdemeanors each, but after the story made headlines, so only after the story made headlines is when things started to change. Once people started to see, you know, when you have a small community like this, sometimes things get swept under the rug. You know, look at the Murdaugh case. You can see how, because of how small that community is, how corrupt some of those leaders can have the opportunity to have, because the checks and balances aren't there. I'll continue. Charges have been reduced to a single misdemeanor count for each. So they went from 13 to 1. And only after headlines came about of this case, right? For the adults, a single misdemeanor still carries a maximum sentence of 6 months in prison and creates a permanent criminal record. The sticker incident happened back in October of 2020. The charges are based on a city ordinance, which prohibits posting any sign, notice, announcement, or any advertising on the matter on fences, buildings, or poles. In Moscow history, the city has never issued a single citation or prosecuted anyone based on this ordinance, although yard signs, stickers, and advertising matter are regularly posted on poles throughout the city as a routine mode of public communication. Rory Wilson, 19, was a recent member of Bill Lambert's Memorial Youth Council, and his younger brother, 14, were stopped by Moscow police after they had received a report that someone was posting stickers on poles around downtown Moscow. These stickers bore a hammer and a sickle and read Soviet Moscow or Moscow, embrace because we care. The stickers were created as a political protest to the now infamous and illegal arrest that MPD made at a peaceful psalm sing outside of City Hall in September of 2020. Now, for those that don't know what that is, I'll go ahead and play that for you. This is actually from that incident. This is in Moscow. This was in protest of the mask ordinance that was around at the time. We all remember those. And so these guys decided to go out there and sing, not so much for religious purposes, but trying to utilize or bend the rules there to publicly gather for religious purposes outside and sing. And they were in close proximity to each other without a mask. And several people, I think it was 3, got arrested. 5 ended up with citations. And so we'll put this out there so you can watch this while I continue. So it further says, neither teenager was Mirandized by the police, although both boys were in custody and interrogated. Police had alleged that Rory was upset and had been handcuffed on the sidewalk until he calmed down, an accusation that Rory and his brother find laughable. According to the boys, an officer stopped them and asked them for their ID. Rory responded that he didn't think Idaho was a stop and identify state. This upset the officer, who responded by handcuffing Rory and forcing him to the sidewalk, where he then was interrogated. His juvenile brother was then taken away from him. He told he did not have the right. He told he did not have a right to remain silent and was interrogated alone against a squad car. Their father was asleep at home at the time. Wilson said magically, despite the number of mic'd up officers and patrol cars involved, the MPD has refused to hand over a single record of the incident from the body cam and the body mics or the dash cams. We have been told that all of these recordings somehow do not exist. So my sons are now in the unfortunate position shared by so many young men around the country. It is their word against the word of the police. These boys were released into their father's custody that night with no citation issued. But a few days later, the boys and their father were delivered summons stating that all 3 were being prosecuted. So even the father, who wasn't there that night and was asleep, was being prosecuted for this. Officer Waters, who had been an officer in charge during the original incident and who delivered summons, denied that the charges were politically motivated and explained that they were simply trying to enforce the law of equality. He did, however, say that the alleged crimes were those most often committed by people posting lost cat posters and yard sale signs. And when Wilson asked MPD had ever handcuffed an old lady hanging a cat poster, Walters declined to answer. And so basically just kind of going, and I'll continue to read this for you guys. And there's actually a picture here, as you can see, of a pole where it has a bunch of stickers on there. All right. And so this is the case that initially had occurred. right? And it ended up getting a lot of headlines. Apparently, I'll be honest, this is the first time that I hear of this, but it got a lot of headlines at the time because of the arrest, because of the political association behind it. This was in protest of the mask mandate, things like that. And so they get arrested, they get charged. This ends up, that's August 5th, 2021. October 27, 2021, Moscow PD buries evidence in sticker case for more than a year. Okay, so let's read this one. This one says, there's no credible explanation for MPD's failure to disclose the evidence as part of the January 22 subpoena response. Defense lawyer Sam Creason said about the video evidence that was released last week at a hearing. So for over a year, the police department and Gunnerson stated that there wasn't any evidence, that proved the claims of the Wilsons to be true, were held back. So this is the Brady and the Giglio part, right? You have the Brady because there's evidence that proved their innocence in a certain extent, and then you have the Giglio part where, I'm sorry, it's the other way. You have the Brady where they held the evidence back, they didn't turn it over, and then the Giglio aspect of it, basically saying that the officers lied, and now that their credibility is no longer valid, right? And so let's continue to read this. The video evidence was released by MPD last week during a hearing which involved testimony from MPD officers under oath. This hearing was to determine the legality and the initial interrogation of the Wilson boys by MPD back in October of 2020. Before the hearing and before going under oath, an MPD officer notified prosecutors that the video evidence did in fact exist on the night of the sticker incident. And so they were aware since the night of the incident that there was video evidence. And so let's continue. Sergeant Gunnerson, who was one of the first two MPD officers on the scene on the night in question, notified prosecutors that Officer Waters had been a responsible officer on scene, captured in the video of the incident and his squad's car dash cam. Gunnerson said that the footage was an MPD system and that it had been in MPD's possession from the very beginning of the case. This footage had been illegally held back from the defense by MPD in its normal course of discovery. Despite public record requests, it had still been held back by MPD. Even when a subpoena was issued in January, it was still held back illegally by MPD. More than a year has passed now since the Moscow City prosecutors in Latah County made history by filing the city's first ever criminal charges against someone for posting a sign or flyer on a pole without permission. Thousands of signs and flyers and stickers have been posted on poles in the city before and since this incident. The incident happened in October of 2020 when the memorabilia red sticker that provoked prosecution read, "Soviet Moscow enforced because we care." In response to the city, attorney Liz Warner filed 13 misdemeanor charges against Nate Wilson and his sons, Rory Wilson, and Latah County prosecutors followed the city's leading in filing against the juvenile defendant now identified as Seamus Wilson. MPD officers stopped the Wilson boys under suspicion of placing the non-damaging sticker on poles in downtown Moscow. In the politically charged case, it has come to be known for some locals as a sticker gate. One significant issue has been between defense and prosecution over whether prosecutors were illegally refusing or simply unable to provide defense with any video or audio evidence on the evening when officers stopped with the Wilson boys. The debate about the video has now been settled by the MPD admitting that the evidence exists. The video and audio surrounding the night is crucial because Roy Wilson was crucified and interrogated without receiving Miranda warnings, and Seamus was separated from his adult brother and interrogated before and after he identified himself as a juvenile without receiving a Miranda warning and without a lawyer or guardian present. What exactly was asked said the length of time the boys were interrogated, when Roy's behavior before being cuffed and put on the ground, and all key questions. Nathan Wilson was at home asleep at the time. So this is just a video right here of a parody. You guys can go find that about this situation. And MPD officers have now acknowledged under oath that a second video had been tagged and stored in the same case file immediately next to the video file they had been withholding, and they continued to withhold until last week. So there's another one that they haven't let go, that they're still withholding even after being subpoenaed. Man, it sounds like the whole department might have an issue here. In the interim, MPD repeatedly represented the defense to court and to the public that no video of any kind existed. This was already textbook malicious and selective prosecution. Nate Wilson said, "I'm glad people can post hundreds of flyers on poles searching for a lost dog, but the city clearly reveals its prejudice and ignorance those but prosecuting us. And while I have been to law school, even I know that burying evidence and defying a subpoena is a much bigger deal than posting stickers." And so Keith Grohl, the Lawtog County prosecuting handling the juvenile case, was not at all happy with the recent developments. Over the course of last year, Skoll and the city prosecutor Liz Warner have repeatedly and falsely maintained to the court that the video evidence had not been provided because it simply did not exist. Judge Megan Marshall correctly identified this claim as suspicious when she first heard of it many months ago. Sanctions may be in order, Schroll admitted to the Judge Marshall at the end of the hearing last week, but this kind of thing does happen. He also said that the existence of a video was a complete surprise to him. Liz Warner did not comment in any way. The defense was finally able to review the full 40-minute video the day before the hearing on the illegality of the interrogation. So they didn't even get an opportunity to witness this until the day before the hearing. One very significant problem with this video was no audio was included. MPD now insists that no audio exists. Whether we've never heard that before, Nathan Wilson said, no pun intended. After finally viewing the long suppressed video, defense counsel Sam Creason of Lewiston immediately reached out to both prosecutors under the assumption that they would be voluntarily dismissing the Euro cases that have been reduced to a single misdemeanor counts. It is extremely disappointing to see that the officers involved not only knew the evidence, but viewed it and maintained it, Creason wrote. He had repeatedly raised a question about whether the absence of the video or the audio evidence throughout the past year. A review of the video demonstrates why MPD did not want this video evidence disclosed. Creason said, and I am hoping that we reach the day when the audio is produced. The officers' conduct that night was improper, and they have put the prosecutor's office in this position. Surprisingly, prosecutors are still determined to push forward, although Kenneth Scholl did file a motion to delay last week's hearing. Creason, however, wanted no further delay, preferring to get officers under oath immediately, and so the hearing proceeded. And so they wanted to continue to go forward as of the 21st, so this might be why this is coming out now. That hearing, I think, is coming to it's come to a close, but I think that there was a result. It resulted in a criminal affairs investigation on the officers that were there, and Gunnerson being one of them, the first officer that had arrived on scene, right? And so it goes on to say that no audio has been produced by MPD, and that they have no explanations. And so here's the one thing, though, right? So in the beginning of this ordeal, we talked about who was the officer, right? It was Shane Gunnerson. In the Airmail article, it describes him as Sergeant Gunnerson. Well, on the Moscow police website now, has him titled as Corporal Gunnerson. Now, he was just promoted as sergeant sometime before the incident. It sounds like he had just been promoted. So maybe this hasn't been up to date. Or maybe it is up to date and he lost the stripe. Now, you don't go backwards for no reason. Now, the fact that he's probably still employed, lost the stripe, means to me, it's just speculation. He probably took an agreement of some sort to not get terminated. However, I don't see this guy ever, being able to investigate a crime as a detective or anything like that. If he ends up being the case that he took an agreement or was found to have been, I don't want to say guilty because it's not a criminal case, but to be found responsible or the actions were improper and it resulted in him losing, some rank there, and this happened to be recently, I think this is pretty big, especially him being the first officer on scene. One thing in that airmail article, it doesn't say that he saw the knife sheath when he discovered the bodies of Kaylee and Maddie. All it does is talk about the ferociousness of the injuries to the victims. It doesn't talk about a knife sheath being present or viewed. I'm not saying that knife sheath was planted or any of those things, but it comes into question, like, what's going on here? And I don't know. You guys tell me in the comments section. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that there's something nefarious going on here? Do you guys think that this has nothing to do with the case, and so it won't affect Kohberger's case? Or do you guys think it's going to have a huge effect on Kohberger's case? Let me know in the comment section. Let me know, guys, what you think. Let me know what you guys think about y'all's confidence in the Moscow Police Department, especially after seeing, some of the things that they're being accused of and whatnot. To me, it's concerning. With that being said, guys, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and ring that notification bell. With that being said, Drunk Turkey Show, I'm Daniel J. Peace out. We'll see you tomorrow night.